Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1468. The topic is Q&A and the title is How Often Should I Change Exercises? So if you've been with us for a little while, we actually did cover this exact topic, this exact title, How Often Should I Change Exercises, back in February of this year. So it's been a little bit, but it was in podcast number 1241. It was a training podcast titled How Often Should I Change Exercises? So I would definitely recommend checking that out because it explains the pros and cons of different lengths and why I typically recommend around 4 weeks, why I do that for my clients. So for my clients, every 4 weeks I'll write them brand new workouts with brand new exercises. Every once in a while we'll maintain the exact same exercise for a exercise, and maybe I'll change things around it for various reasons. But we tend to change our exercises every 4 weeks. Now, the reason why I wanted to revisit this was a listener sent in a question. He had listened to podcast 1241 and sent in a really awesome question, lovely concept, I like it. But he said he was watching a video of an IFBB pro, or like a bodybuilder pro, who has kept the same exercises for 20 weeks. So he sent me the link. I watched the video. Awesome. Great content. Awesome to see how pros like the quality of the lifting that they do and how intense they can be, but yet their form stays crisp and correct throughout the exercises. So very motivating. I used to watch bodybuilders back when I was 16, 17 on RX Muscles in the Iron Asylum. I used to do dial-up internet, and I would download those and watch them every day. So I loved it. Now, what I thought was interesting was the pro bodybuilder said people should keep the same exercises as long as they're continuing to make progress. But these are the things that kind of like make me bummed out, because what's not mentioned in the video is very significant things as to why that person can do 20 weeks of the exact same exercise, but why other people cannot. So I wanted to share kind of thoughts. So I work with people who are brand new to lifting. They don't know the difference between a dumbbell and a barbell. And I do work with IFBB pros. So awesome. So from beginners to advanced. So some thoughts. So number one is the progress you're making safe? You might be sticking with an exercise and you're like, yeah, I was able to add 5 extra pounds or 10 extra pounds, or I was able to add an extra rep or two. But is what you're doing safe? Like, is your technique still good? Or are you starting to like kind of twist and maybe starting to like drop too fast or hitch on a deadlift, or your knees starting to buckle when you squat? Are you putting yourself at risk trying to get that extra rep or two, or trying to add that 5 or 10 extra pounds? If you're putting yourself at any risk, it's better for you to switch exercises. Go to something else that still targets those muscles and start like a kind of a linear progression with that exercise, because that's going to keep you safe in the long run. The best way to reach your fullest potential is to never get injured. So stay the hell away from injuries. And that's going to be very significant. Rather than you trying to squeeze out 1 or 2 extra reps or 5 extra pounds and potentially getting injured, that's going to take weeks, if not months, and then limit your total potential ceiling. It's not worth it for an extra rep or 2 or an extra 5 pounds. Just switch exercises and progress on that, and then come back to the one you've been doing. And then the other question is your progress significant? So I've talked with bodybuilders and they're like, yeah, I improved my technique from week 1 to week 2. So I didn't add any weight or I didn't add any reps, but I felt like my technique was better. And maybe they do that for another week. And then the third week they're like, well, on the third set of my working sets, I was able to add 1 extra rep. So they did 3 sets of 8, like say a set of 8, a set of 8, and then a set of 9. Whereas last week they did a set of 8, a set of 8, and a set of 8. And I'm like, okay, you added 1 rep, and you like, that's so insignificant. And they're like, well, it's all about volume. If you add that 1 extra repetition on 2 or 3 exercises, blah, 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 blah. No, it's not significant. It's not significant enough. So improving your technique is important, and that's great, and that's a good thing. But, from week to week, if you're only able to add 1 or 2 extra reps total, not even 1 or 2 extra reps per set, just 1 or 2 reps total in a body part, a whole body part, that's not significant at all. In no way is that going to push the body to continue to progress. So, especially when you're like there's just so much difference to it, whether you're a beginner, an intermediate, or a pro. So, for example, beginners will need to stay with the same exercises, especially if they're big exercises: squat, bench, deadlift, leg press, walking lunges, overhead press, chest press, one-arm dumbbell rows, things that people typically take time to get technically proficient at. They might stay with that for longer because, from like week 1 to week 2 to week 3 to week 4, they're still learning what the hell they're doing. It's like, a brand new baby deer trying to learn how to walk. So they're still kind of figuring it out. So I might have somebody who's brand new to doing dumbbell one-arm rows, and we might be doing it for 8 weeks in a row because they're still learning it. They're still figuring it out. They're still trying to learn how to not round their upper back when they're in that position, not like scoop their butt under them. They want to have a nice flat back, like a neutral spine position. They want to learn how to initiate through their mid-back and their shoulder movement, not through their bicep. So beginners sometimes need to stay with things longer so they can learn the technique. And then pros, especially IFBB pros, they're going to stay with stuff longer because their adaptation speed is enhanced. So they're taking drugs to help with protein synthesis. So basically the rate of recovery between their workouts is faster and they can get a greater degree of recovery. And their only freaking job is to eat food and sleep and train. So they're getting the peak of sleep ability for adaptation, the peak of food ability for adaptation, and then therefore their training, they can make it like progressions in their training that people who can't sleep as perfectly, can't eat as perfectly, don't have as much stress control and CNS control, you're just not going to be able to adapt even with lifestyle matters, let alone drug enhancements. So if somebody's on every drug that doesn't immediately kill them because they're a top 5, Mr. Olympia kind of person, they're going to be able to adapt to workouts a hell of a lot better than you and I would. They're going to have much better adaptations. So therefore they can stay with movements and say like, yeah, okay, I was able to add 5 extra pounds every week or a couple extra reps every week because that's the only freaking thing they're doing. So that's what they're doing all day, every day. They have all the chemicals in their body that help them to be able to do that. So if the pro says, I've been doing this for the same exercises for 20 weeks, and so should you. Bullshit. Whoever you're talking to, are they taking the same drugs you're taking? That is a huge factor. Even if they are taking the same drugs, do they have a day job? Are they able to eat the way that you're supposed to eat? And then also the drugs, like there's obviously like testosterone based that you need like for that, but there's also there's insulin that you would take post meals to help the absorption of it. There's human growth factor. So oh my gosh, there's just so many drugs that a lot of amateurs and intermediates in bodybuilding think like, I'm taking, X amount of testosterone every week, therefore I'm the same as Mr. Olympia. No, they're taking a hell of a lot more. So it's a whole world of what people don't know. And that's where it's very frustrating to hear a pro who should know all that, telling people that it's okay if they stay with the same exercise for 20 weeks because they're just not going to be able to do that safely and they're not going to be able to do that significantly. So if you're an intermediate lifter, meaning you're not a professional but you have been lifting for a while, you do have to change more often than what the pros would do. You change more often than you did when you were a beginner, and you should change more often than professionals do. Because you don't have as much need to improve on technique. There's not as much room to improve your technique. You max that out pretty quick. So therefore, then, if you want to add 5 pounds or add reps, your adaptation speed isn't going to be as advanced as the professionals. So you're going to have to compensate by either doing it unsafely with bad technique or saying that you're progressing, but you're doing it with insignificant progression. And that's where a lot of people get into trouble is once they're past the beginner stage, they kind of wonder why they don't grow as much. And it's either because they haven't continued to progress their nutrition to match their new body, and or they're not taking care of sleep, they're not taking care of hydration, and then also you have the factor of they're staying with exercises for too long, and the progressions they think they're making just aren't significant. So it's very interesting when you think of it in like the spectrum from beginner to pro, is beginners might need to stay at exercises longer. Professionals might be able to stay at exercises longer, but intermediates do have to change a little more often. And are there some exceptions to this somewhere? Sure. But overwhelmingly, this is going to be the pattern you'll see with most people. So if you're an intermediate, you might need to change exercises more often than you think, and more often than like a professional is telling you. If the professional isn't like paying attention to the fact that they're chemically enhanced and they've maximized their lifestyle to maximize adaptation response between workouts. So I thought that would just be fun to share kind of some thoughts behind that and why that is the case, that some people in some situations might stick with exercises longer, but some people in some situations might need to change exercises more frequently. So listen to podcast 1241, training podcast titled How Often Should I Change Exercises, to learn more about the kind of actual numbers and details of all that. Hopefully today was just a good conversation and it helped kind of give more clarity as to why you would hear differing advice, but what they might not be paying attention to when they give you that advice. Awesome. Well, if anybody else ever has any questions or wants to send in any videos, please do. I really enjoy it. It's a great way for me to continue to learn all the time. So thank you. You're basically helping me. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. But if you ever have any questions or if you ever see any videos or anything that you're confused by or you want some clarity on, just reach out. Or email is brutalironGym@gmail.com. Cool. Well, if you like today's podcast or the podcast in general, please consider sharing it. The more people we share the podcast with, the more people it can help. That's the whole goal. So thank you. Thank you to the people who donate to support the podcast. The podcast is well over $1,000 a year for hosting costs. I give an hour to it every day, and we want to keep it for free. So thank you to those donations to help cover some of that cost. If you do want to donate, you can do so at our website, which is www.brutalironGym.com. There's an option there for a one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation, even just $5 a month. It does go a long way, and it does help. So thank you very much. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything you want to know, let us know at our email, brutalironGym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.